All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast with your hosts, Chase Steffes and Derek Larger. This is the post draft special of the Chasing Larger Sports Stories. Keep tuning in over the next couple weeks because we're going to go through each division starting probably either tomorrow or sometime this next week about each draft that everybody had and going through picking the best players and figuring out which teams did the best for the draft there. We'll do two divisions a week and go from there. But to start off with, let's go over the top 10 picks, Derek, and figure out whether or not that they were good fits for their teams and if they're going to have success in the NFL. So starting off with number one, easily Bryce Young. My opinion, it should have been C.J. Stroud because I think that he was the best quarterback prospect in this draft, and they were going 1 and 2 throughout the entire draft process of figuring out who was going to be the better quarterback. But I think the Carolina Panthers did get their future guy, number one overall. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of assumed going into that Bryce Young was probably going to be the favorite for this. Of course, Dave Tepper probably fell in love with Bryce Young. There's really not much to not like about Bryce Young and his game and how he approaches it. And, with Frank Reich, being able to have a mobile quarterback like Bryce Young really can open up a lot of different things in that offense. Hopefully, with the new weapons that they've brought in and, hopefully new weapons that they try to bring in going forward. I agreed with you. I thought CJ Stroud should have been the number one, but of course, that's just how it is for that. But at the end of the day, Carolina got a really good quarterback, maybe the best quarterback in the whole draft right now. So, that definitely is a great way to start off your tenure as Frank Reich, as the new head coach in Carolina. And then, of course, that number two pick, the guy right after, CJ Stroud to the Houston Texans. We were wondering about that. We were wondering, was Houston actually going to go with a quarterback if Bryce Young was taken? Well, sure enough, yeah, he was. And it didn't seem like they had to worry about that. So, I mean, what did you think when CJ Stroud's name came up there?
Dude, I was shocked because, we all thought it was like he was the consensus number two pick. And then, like, 2 weeks before the draft ended, we were like, oh, hearing reports that Houston may not take a quarterback because they don't like any of the other quarterbacks in this draft. And we started hearing talks about how they might go for Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, or they might just go with Will Anderson at number two. And then, figure out their quarterback later on in the draft and stuff like that. So we kept hearing all sorts of different reports, but Frank Reich got his guy in Bryce Young, and first time in a long time, especially being at Indy, that he's been able to work with guy. And now you go to number two and three. Might as well talk about three as well. DeMeco Ryans, a defensive-minded head coach, has got his now franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud to work with, and also his best defensive player in this draft class, who they said has been one of the better defensive prospects since Myles Garrett coming out. And honestly, when the Texans traded up to the number three pick, I was very shocked. And we all knew when they traded up, they were going after Will Anderson. Like, we knew 100% that was the only pick in the first round outside of Anthony Richardson that we all knew was going to the Houston Texans, and that was the only pick that we guessed because we thought that the Colts may throw a curveball in there and go with Will Levis. So going into the number 4 spot, Derek, I'll let you talk about that one real quick. What was your thoughts on that? Did you have any doubt that they would choose Richardson or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have no idea, man. I mean, it was one of those situations. You have no idea what these guys are going to do. And of course, when you saw, what the Colts were doing with, the next pick, their draft series that they have on YouTube, they talked a lot about what went into that decision to get Anthony Richardson. And, he said it like, a month ago, they were very much set on Anthony Richardson being the guy, but they just didn't want to have to trade up and give up those assets to go and get him, but they still wanted him to be their guy. And of course, when you look at Anthony Richardson, I'm happy with it because at the end of the day, you're not taking Anthony Richardson for what he is right now. You're taking him for what he can become, what you think he can become. And obviously, with Shane Steichen as your head coach, who has helped coach a lot of quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson and has helped them develop and has helped them progress to where they are now. And Anthony Richardson, just hearing him talk, hearing him like just react to all of this, he is so mature for a 20-year-old kid. And it's amazing that he's going to be here in Indianapolis. And I think Indy got a fantastic deal here with number 4 with Anthony Richardson.
I think so too. I think that, choosing a guy like Anthony Richardson, I agreed with a lot of people saying that he was a very raw prospect, that he needs time to develop, time to work. And I was advocating for Gardner Minshew to start at first and then let Richardson develop and learn in the process. But if Shane Steichen believes that he can get him to play at a high level right away, now I don't expect the Colts to come out and win 10, 11 games right off the bat, but a tremendous increase of like 4, maybe 5 games this next year and winning. You guys won 4 last year. I expect 8, maybe 9 wins this season, especially with the much better upgraded roster that you guys have on the team. But, a physical specimen, a physical freak like Anthony Richardson, the Colts haven't had that since Andrew Luck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, if I encourage you, if you haven't already, go onto YouTube, go onto the Colts YouTube account and watch their With the Next Pick series. It basically does the behind the scenes work on like what these guys are doing, talking about these guys. It's hilarious, some of the stuff they have. And it was funny because Ballard was saying no talk of these quarterbacks outside this room. Like, don't tell your buddies, don't tell your friends, don't tell your family. It's like, my wife doesn't know this stuff. Like, I don't say nothing to her about anything because you know how it is. I mean, you know how it is. Somebody can accidentally slip something, and somebody who has nothing to do with it goes out and says something to, if Ballard's wife heard that he was going to pick Richardson, she accidentally goes out to like a hair salon, tells her friend knows a person who is big time and, leaks that news. Right. So that's one of those situations. But yeah, I was insanely happy with it. But I mean, dude, Morocco Brown, who's second in command behind Ed Dodds, basically could not say enough good things about this kid. This guy said he has stuff in him that you don't see for 50 years. Like some of the things he does, and I'll repeat that, 50, not 15, 50. Like it's a once in a lifetime quarterback, some of the things that he can do that just other guys in this league just could only ever dream of doing. So, again, everything, he has all the potential in the world to be the best quarterback in the NFL by a long shot. It's just a matter of whether or not,
except for
Mahomes. But I mean, even then, like, I mean, Anthony Richardson has, that athletic side to him that Mahomes could never dream of. But obviously, it's a matter of whether or not Steichen can get him into that role, and that's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to do it, but nevertheless, I'm happy with Anthony Richardson being an Indy.
I think you guys did get a good pick there. I think that, it's going to take a lot to dethrone the top guys. What's up, man? I'm loving the YouTube channel. I'm loving, doing the show with Derek and everything. We're trying to get it big and get it going and everything. So just keep, sending it out to your friends, sending it out to all social media platforms that you own, and try to get it out there so that way we can get the views up. But as far as it goes for you guys, I think that it's going to take a while for him to dethrone the top guys like a Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, of course. But if anybody can do it, Shane Steichen can, because obviously he did it with Jalen Hurts. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. But
moving on to the number 5th pick, Devin Witherspoon, arguably my best corner that I had rated in this draft class. In terms of lockdown guys, him and Tariq Woolen, Pete Carroll's trying to build the Legion of Boom 2.0.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to talk about Seattle here soon about like which teams had the best drafts. I mean, yeah, Devin Witherspoon at that spot was a phenomenal pick. Like you said, Tariq Woolen, who was basically, if you look back at last year's draft, Tariq Woolen might have been the biggest steal of the entire draft because that kid being in the 5th round and somehow, some way ended up having like, what was it, 6 or 7 interceptions last year as a rookie.
It was insane.
I mean, it's insane the numbers that he was putting up.
Outside of Sauce, he might have been the
probably,
next best corner.
He might have been the next best corner. I mean, it's at least from a turnover perspective, what he provided for them. And of course, like you said, they're just adding.
They still got Jamal Adams coming back off an injury too, and if he's healthy and plays like he did before, dude, you've got Jamal Adams, Tariq Woolen, and now Devin Witherspoon in the back end. Come on, man, you got to be kidding me with that.
Yeah, Legion of Boom 2.0, bro. I mean, it really. I don't even think it's just the no-fly zone at this point. It's just the no-fly zone in Seattle. I mean, them Seahawks are keeping everybody low, man. I mean, Devin Witherspoon is just locked down. Tariq Woolen showed you he can be locked down. I mean, you have 2 guys on the outside that realistically could be all pros in this league for a long time coming. I mean, that's really amazing. And, you know, a lot of people would think, oh, maybe you should have went a different direction. You can never have too many really good corners. It's hard enough in this league to get it's hard enough to get 1 good corner in this league, let alone to get 2. So that is a very luxurious thing. And to have both of those young corners be on the rookie contract.
Oh, dude, it's insane. One's is obviously gonna be up before the other, but you know, Jamal Adams is actually pretty good when he's actually healthy, but the thing is, like, he hasn't been able to stay healthy since his first year in Seattle. So
yeah, right.
If he can actually be on the field for the entire season, he can make a dramatic difference in the back end, especially being that strong safety. I think that the only thing that they're missing is a free safety in the back end of the defense for the Seahawks. But other than that, they are creating a no-fly zone, Legion of Boom 2.0, whatever you want to call it. But it is getting a lot better.
Yes.
So moving on to the 6th pick, we've got the Arizona Cardinals in this spot. So the Detroit Lions were originally in this spot. The Cardinals jumped back all the way to 12.
And then traded up with Detroit.
For this pick, and Detroit traded back to 12 and picked up another pick next year, and also the Cardinals 2nd rounder for this year, which they ended up getting 3 2nd rounders. The Lions did, but the Cardinals chose Paris Johnson Jr. Now, Derek, here's the question that we were talking about in the car earlier today. They got Paris Johnson Jr., which was probably one of, if not the best left tackle in this draft.
Yes.
A good, solid piece for their offensive line.
Yes.
The question begs to differ is if Arizona somehow sucks this entire season, they've got the Houston Texans 1st round pick, and they've got their own 1st round pick. If they get the number 1 overall pick, do they go with Caleb Williams and trade Kyler Murray, or do they trade out of that 1st overall pick and get another draft haul for the following year?
And JDW, no, I would not be upset if you posted the link to this in the BTJ Discord. You can do that if you'd like. Yeah, anyway, so, I mean, a couple things have to happen. First of all, like Arizona to be bad this next year. And without a doubt, I think they could be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. Obviously, Kyler Murray's not going to play for half the year because of the injury that he sustained. And, of course, when you know, you're talking about this new coach, which everyone seems to think Jonathan Gannon is not going to do a good job with this team. I have no idea
and
how
D-Hop,
that works.
Who knows if he's going to be there or not?
I mean, D-Hop says he kind of wants to be there now, but at the end of the day, nobody's going to be throwing him the football this year. So, you know, I mean, Paris Johnson, we'll get to that in a second. If I were them, I would 100% be willing to bite the dust on Kyler Murray's contract and just go and get Caleb, because at least then, you know, by the time Kyler's contract is officially up, and somebody you can probably get away with paying like half of Kyler's contract. The other team would probably take the other half, and I'm sure some teams would be happy about it. And then you can just say, okay, we're gonna eat that, but we know Caleb Williams is coming in here, and for a decade will be the next Aaron Rodgers of the NFL, a guy that every year is going to light people up, and that's what is concerning when you look at that from an Arizona standpoint. So yeah, I would 100% do that with Caleb. But in regards to the Paris Johnson one, yeah, I mean, Paris Johnson was the best left tackle in all college football this last year. Clearly, they're trying to beef up the offensive line. They haven't had a good offensive line for a long time. Arizona, the only problem is they got so many empty spots.
They do.
That they need to fill everything.
But they got a lot. They got a lot to look forward to. 2 first-rounders next year, no second-rounders, 3 third-rounders, 2 fifth-rounders, 2 sixth-rounders, and 2 seventh-rounders. They've got a lot to look forward to this next draft.
Absolutely. And, you know, they could have went left tackle next year, but at the end of the day, like, you know, it's hard to have a really good left tackle in this league.
It's hard to find them, yes.
And so, you know, if you believe that Paris Johnson can be a guy for 10 years to cover whatever quarterback's going to be back there for you for a while, then that absolutely was a good pick.
Yeah, and JDW, like, to go back on the Caleb Williams thing, I actually predicted 2 years ago, and I've got it in one of my group chats with my friends. If I could ever find it, I would show you. But I posted and said that, wow, this man, Caleb Williams, is going to be the number 1 overall pick in 2 years. And they're like, dude, it's like literally 4 games into the college season. And how are you going to say that? And soon enough, here we are. You know, he's won a Heisman Trophy. He's projected to be the number 1 overall pick. And at Oklahoma, I was seeing that when he took over for Spencer Rattler. So, you know, it's amazing what a career some of these guys have. But moving on to the 7th pick, we've got Tyree Wilson. Many regarded Tyree Wilson as being the second best edge rusher in this whole entire draft class. And the Oakland Raiders have had a garbage defense for the past...
Vegas Raiders.
My bad. The Vegas Raiders have had a garbage defense for the past, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And they really haven't had anybody decent on their defense except for Max Crosby and, you know, a couple others. But now you pair Max Crosby with Tyree Wilson, and then also you start getting a few corners and stuff in the 2nd and 3rd round. You are starting to develop this defense and get picks or get these players that you really need and want on this defensive side of the football. Now, let's see if they can actually stop somebody in their division, because they had no secondary. They had no secondary going into this draft, and they spent their first pick on an edge rusher, which was shocking, instead of getting like Christian Gonzalez or something. But hey, who are we to say what the Raiders want to do with their defense?
This is such a Raiders thing to do. Take a guy that just doesn't really make a lot of sense. I love Tyree Wilson. I think that he is definitely a day 1 starter for any team that he goes to. It's just kind of one of those situations where, like you said, they have, you know, 2 edge guys already, and Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, who are already there, and they already are going to play well. I know that Chandler Jones most likely will not be there at the end of this year, but at the end of the day, you're still going to have to wait to get the full effect of a Tyree Wilson.
Can you name any of the secondary players for the Raiders right now?
The only one that I knew that they had was Rock Ya-Sin, and of course, he's gone now. He was a free agent. They didn't re-sign him. So I really don't know who they have in their secondary right now. I'd have to pull up the roster. But, I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, remember when in 2018 when the Raiders took Cleveland Farrell at the 4th overall pick?
Instead of over Josh Allen?
Yeah, and it was like, yeah, everyone was like, wait, what? Why did you do that? It's not one of those situations, but
it's like the Alex Leatherwood situation. You took a
Damon Arnett. Oh, well, Damon Arnett. I mean, listen,
he's not on the team anymore.
I didn't even think he was.
No, they released him a while ago. Like,
because he had like some like legal trouble. That was
and then Jonathan Abrams, they released him last year too. I don't even know if they picked up anybody during free agency that I can think of.
Not any big ones that I can think of, but like, yeah, that's going to be the thing. I mean, the Raiders definitely will be able to get after you this year, the quarterback. But the thing is, you know, it's going to be tough for them in the secondary. I mean, it's very, very tough. You know, I mean, I've always said though that like if you have an amazing defensive line, it really helps your corners because obviously it keeps your corners from, having to play as much, which is always a good thing. And then, of course, if you have an amazing secondary, it helps your defensive line out because it gives them a little bit of extra time to be able to, get those few extra sacks. So, I mean, look, I love Tyree Wilson. I think he is a great player. I just think the fit is a little weird.
I think the fit is a little weird because, like I said, the Raiders could have easily gone with Christian Gonzalez, who was arguably my second best corner in the draft, and the fact that he fell to 17 to the Patriots was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Like I can't believe that. I would have thought that the Eagles would have taken him. I would have thought that the Raiders would have taken him. I even thought the Cardinals would have taken him because I can't even name anybody on the Cardinals that has a other than Budda Baker
and he's a safety
in the secondary. Yeah, and he's a safety. So I really don't know. But anyway, we'll move on to the 8th pick now. Now here's where it got tricky and people were questioning why. The Falcons were one of the better running teams in the league last year, and they ran the ball down a lot of people's throats with Tyler Algier and I can't even think of the other guy that they had. Cordero Patterson. They ran the ball down the throat with those two guys, but obviously Bijan Robinson has been named the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley, who went number 2 overall. And the fact that the Falcons have spent the past like 4 years beefing up their O-line. They got a few O-linemen during free agency. They beefed up their secondary with getting Clark Phillips now, getting Jesse Bates. They have Calais Campbell on the defensive line and everything. They spent money in free agency. Now they spent time to get Bijan Robinson to help pair with Desmond Ridder and help him out. I think that this was a solid pick for the Falcons. And people think it's too high, but if the Falcons would have waited to try to trade back into the first round or even waited until the second, he would have been picked up by potentially the Lions, who were looking at a running back, because obviously Jahmyr Gibbs. He would have been probably picked up by the Chargers, who are looking to get rid of Austin Eckler. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Titans, because they want to get rid of Derrick Henry. He probably could have been picked up by the Cowboys, the Bengals, and the Bills. So regardless, if the Falcons didn't jump on him now, he would have been gone way before they would have been able to pick again. So I could see why they chose him.
In hindsight, you look at it and you say, that definitely would have been an okay pick. It's just kind of like one of those situations. I mean, that is the highest that a running back has been drafted since
Barkley.
It was Elliott. Elliott back in 2016.
Barkley was number 2 overall.
Well, Barkley was number 2, but I'm saying obviously Elliott was number 4.
Yeah.
Just from that sake, you're talking about the likes of Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley here. I mean, that's kind of it's definitely one of those situations where it's very high. And you and I said it before, and I'll continue to say it. And even JDW said it here. There are so many other positions of need than a running back. At the end of the day, there's just very few running backs left in the NFL nowadays that really impact the game of football, that truly impact it to the point where you diverge a whole offense around it. It just doesn't, it very rarely happens. And even some of the best running backs in the NFL right now, you look at it and you're like CMC, right? CMC, what he did last year with San Francisco, one of the most amazing things that we've ever seen. He took off in San Francisco's stuff. But then again, that was because he wasn't the primary guy. He was used a lot in that system, but he wasn't the only one. You talk about Brandon Ayuk. You talk about Deebo Samuel. You talk about George Kittle. And, just how Brock Purdy managed the offense. It simplified it to the point where CMC wasn't the main guy, but he was able to use his play in the system that was already created. And you talk about some of the running backs that are being used right now, like Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry, who we saw from last year. The systems really run those running backs down. I mean, it's just kind of one of those. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor's in a new system now when it comes to with Shane Steichen. So we'll see how his play is different. And Derrick Henry's obviously you and I think both think is at some point it's going to hit that wall. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans were thinking that. That's why they're trying to trade him. So, I mean, it's just really hard to sit back and just say that a running back ultimately just dictates the offense.
Yes,
So,
but the running back also helps an offense out a lot, because what is the one piece that Buffalo is missing in their offense to help make them successful? That is a running back. They are missing a true, like, dark horse running back that can be a ground and pound guy, or even come out of the backfield and be another weapon and everything. And that is the one thing that's causing Josh Allen to throw 40 to 50 times a game, because you don't have a good run game. And like, that's why people draft these running backs so high. That's why they get them, is to take a load off of their arm, or to help the quarterback and open up the offense. Like, it basically, Shane Steichen said it best: you got to throw to score and run to win. And if you don't have a good running back to be able to run with, you ain't going to win the games. It's point blank, period. I mean, we've also seen guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire that got drafted very high fall off, but Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th round running back, has been lighting it up with the Kansas City Chiefs and everything. You know, you got to pick your poison. I get where the Falcons are coming from with this and why they did it, because they want to be able to take the load off of Desmond Ridder and not have him do so much, and like let him be able to develop and run the offense like he wants. But in the end, you know, a good running back prospect like this will help out your team immensely. And there's other positional needs that I feel like they filled throughout the rest of the draft. Now, they possibly could have went out and got another wide receiver option for them and everything like that. I get that, because Arthur Smith does a terrible job at incorporating Kyle Pitts into the offense.
did you see I don't remember who it was that talked about it, but did you hear what some prospect said about Arthur Smith and how he interviewed him?
Yeah,
like
Peter Skoronski said that.
Yeah, Peter Skoronski said that. It said that he ended up just talking to me behind his computer the whole time, acted like as if it was really boring. Like, it was boring. It wasn't like there was no interactivity or anything like that. And Skoronski almost said he basically just laughed to himself at that interview. And I'm just I'm thinking to myself, just like, bro, if that's how things are getting done in Falcons land, then no wonder the Falcons are dead, are one of the most dead last teams all the time, because they just don't have anybody that actually cares. That's pretty funny to think about. But nevertheless, we'll go into the last 2 picks here. Number 9, and this one was one of the bigger surprises of the first round, and that was Jalen Carter to Philadelphia. Again,
hey, way to hit the like button. Good job.
Yeah. Again, just classic Howie Roseman. Go and get the guy that everyone else just skips on.
The Philadelphia Bulldogs.
The Philadelphia Bulldogs. That's what we've been calling them ever since that happened, because later on in this first round, they go and also get Nolan Smith from Georgia.
And then they go get Kelee Ringo.
Kelee Ringo later in the draft too. So now 5 or 6 different Georgia Bulldogs.
They also got Nakobe Dean from last year.
Yeah, so they now have, I believe it is 6 Georgia Bulldogs from that national championship defense for the last 2 years is now on the Philadelphia Eagles. That actually is 5. It's 5. It's Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, Kelee Ringo. So those 5, all 5 guys that were on both of those, or not on both of those, but on either one of those national championship defenses for Georgia, who may have been one of the best defenses that we've ever seen in college football, are now on the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, and it's just incredible.
The Philadelphia Bulldogs, or, you know, the Georgia Eagles, one of the two. But
oh, yeah, and then also traded for DeAndre Swift. He was a Bulldog. So you think of that bullshit, right? Like, I mean, come on. This is just Howie playing with everyone. And it's hilarious too, because remember 3 years ago when they drafted Jalen Hurts and everyone was like, Howie, what in the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why are you drafting a quarterback when you had a guy in Carson Wentz who was already in the building, already understood how the game worked and how he could be? Like, I mean, you know, he could do something. But then, of course, here we go. Ever since then, Howie Roseman has been the best GM at getting players, helping players to, you know, progress with the coaches that they've had. through these last 3 years, and there's no one stopping it.
You want to hear a funny story? I don't know if you read it or not. I read an article about Howie Roseman's trip from where he almost got fired, because he was talking about after the whole like Carson Wentz fiasco started going down, the owner was thinking about letting Howie go, but he said that he'd give him one more chance to try to revitalize his career. And Howie said that he kind of went in a different direction with the way that he evaluated players and picked players in the draft and everything. And, he went, instead of looking at needs or like fits and everything, he kind of looked at like what players are going to be the best for me. And he decided to go picking off of that. And that's why Andrew Berry is one of the more aggressive GMs in the league as well, because he learned under Howie for a year and a half on how he ran things in Philadelphia. So it's very shocking, to say the least. And not to mention, he went from 10 to 9 to get Jalen Carter and steal him away from the Bears. Now, bringing that to the next pick, Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle out of Tennessee, which I think that arguably was either the second or third best tackle in this draft. And I know that there was a lot of Bears fans kind of questioning why you chose Darnell Wright when Peter Skoronski was on the board, when Broderick Jones was on the board. Why did you pick him? Well, with how big he is, how well he moves and everything, and how mobile Justin Fields is, it fits well with the system that Chicago is running. Now, would they have taken Jalen Carter? Maybe, maybe not. I think what they are trying to do, Ryan Poles is trying to do, is he was building the defense throughout the rest of the draft. He was building the defense through free agency, signing all these guys. He wanted to focus on offense for the first pick, at least, to try to get him to be like, all right, we need to find somebody to protect the blind side of our quarterback and protect him for years to come, because that offensive line was so terrible for the Bears last year that every time Justin Fields would take his 3-step or his 5-step drop, there would be somebody in his face every single play. And that's what they wanted to do. And then they got Tyler Scott later on in the draft as well, who was a speedster wide receiver and is probably going to make a big impact along with DJ Moore and Chase Claypool. But that's what we got for the top 10 picks. Now let's move on to who we think are our top 5 teams that had the best draft. Derek, who's your number 5 team?
Well, if we're going to go with who is the top 5 best drafts, it's going to be difficult to kind of decide who was number 5, because I'm trying to remind myself who ended up having really good drafts. But I think if you're going to go with one team, I would probably say down the line, I would probably go with Houston. Houston is one of those because obviously, like what you saw in the first round, they went and got CJ Stroud. They went and got Will Anderson. They might have given up quite a bit to do that, but they went and got the guys that they felt was necessary. And then they went out and got a couple of other very key positions that I think could really come in handy for them. So, I mean, if I had to, I'd say Houston was one of the top 5 when it came to best drafts.
See, I got pretty much mine in order, like from 5 to 1. Did you want me to say all mine and then?
Yeah, just go ahead and do
So, my number 5 team, I'd have to go with the Chicago Bears, because not only did they have a great free agency, bringing a lot of players in and bringing guys in that would help out Justin Fields and the defensive side of the football, but throughout the draft, they were able to get guys like Tyler Scott later on in the draft. They were able to get Noah Sewell, who was, one of the better linebackers in this league or in college football and everything. They were able to get a couple secondary players, a couple corners and everything. They were able to build the defensive side of the football through the rest of the draft, and they drafted a couple offensive or interior offensive linemen. I think that, Ryan Poles is trying his best to build up the Chicago Bears and have future picks to come. And you got 2 first-rounders next year to work with to try to get maybe Marvin Harrison if it depends on where they pick at, or to go out and get more offensive linemen to help build. Number 4, I would say that number 4 for me would have to be the Houston Texans. Like you said, they went out and got CJ Stroud. They traded back up to get Will Anderson. They used their first-round pick, and Houston still has a first-rounder for next year in Cleveland's pick that they kept for themselves. But they were able to go ahead and get the best defensive player in the draft, and in my opinion, arguably the best quarterback in this draft to work with from time to come. You in the second round, you go get a center to help bolster that offensive line, and then not to mention you go out and get Tank Dell, who many regarded as one of the fastest wide receivers out there and had great hands. He was arguably supposed to be a second round or third round pick, and they got him in the fourth or fifth round. And then you go out and get Xavier Hutchinson at the end of the draft to round that out for the offensive weapons. Not to mention you still got John Mechie. You got Dalton Schultz. You've got Robert Woods. You've got Dameon Pierce on that offense. That offense is going to be clicking now that they've got CJ Stroud in there, and they started building that defense later on in the draft. So they're my number 4. Number 3 would have to go Seattle Seahawks for me because of the value that they were able to pick up throughout the rest of the draft. Because not only did they get Devin Witherspoon, they also got – why do you say you? They also got JSN with that second first-round pick. And they were able to they got Zach Charbonnet in the second round, which people were questioning why they chose him over Kenneth Walker and everything. Or, I mean, why they chose him when they've got Kenneth Walker. But, like, have a dual backfield, take pressure off of Kenneth Walker. Make it to where he doesn't have to, run the ball that much. He's going to have so much more longevity in the future if you do that. And number 2, I'd have to go with the Philadelphia Eagles just because of everything that Howie Roseman's been able to do and everything that he's been able to here, go up to the comments. I want to see what they're saying. But everything that Howie Roseman's been able to do with the Eagles and how he's been able to, have 12 players leave in free agency and then build the same team throughout the draft and get the same positions that you lost for, next to nothing, because they also got Sidney Brown, who was one of the better safety prospects in the third round, getting Keely Ringo in the third round as well, getting Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. The Eagles had to have been my number 2. And then, honestly, my team that had the best draft, in my opinion, was the Indianapolis Colts, because you get your franchise quarterback in Anthony Richardson with that first pick. Then the second pick, you choose Julius Brents, and arguably one of the most underrated corner prospects out there. And he's got the height, he's got the frame, he's got the build and everything that you need. Then later on in the draft, they get Darius Rush, who is also another very big underrated corner. They got how do you pronounce his name? I forgot.
Adewatami Adebawore.
Yeah.
Adebawore.
They got him, who was projected to be a second-round pick or borderline first-rounder. He was one of the better defensive tackles coming into this draft, and he could play defensive end if you need him. And not to mention Blake Freeland, the offensive tackle out of BYU, was projected to be a second-rounder or even a third-rounder, and they got him in the 4th. So they got a steal throughout the entire draft, and that's not even that. Like, they got 12 picks total that they use to build this team for the future. And I honestly think that this team is going to be I feel like this team is going to be,
Stroud is force to be reckoned with. Clifford is better. JDW, you talk it out your ass right now. You know that. So
Browns did have a dynamite draft. I will say that they, without a first-round pick or a second-round pick, they got the positions of need. They were able to get people for the future and build, to where they can make starters the next year.
So your top 3 was Seahawks, Eagles, and Colts, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you and I are both going to agree on that. Actually, I think you said number 4 was Houston as well. And who'd you say was your number 5?
The Bears.
The Bears.
I think the Bears had a sneaky underrated draft.
I think for me, number 5 was Pitt.
Because Pitt did have a good one.
Because I think for them having a fewer amount of picks, the amount of value they were able to get at those picks was really good. Taking Broderick Jones in round 1, a really solid offensive lineman, and then still being able to get Joey Porter Jr. early in that second round was huge. And then taking the chance on getting Darnell Washington late in the 3rd round when everyone was seeing all these tight ends go off the board.
Keanu Benton too.
Yeah, and they had some really good – they didn't have a ton of picks, but their value for where they got those guys was really solid, and I really like what Pitt did. I feel like for positional value, I felt like they did a fantastic job with it. Houston, I would agree with you. Stroud, Anderson, Juice Scruggs, who's going to be maybe their center going forward.
He is their center, yeah.
And then Tank Dell, that wide receiver that they picked up. Great weapon for
Xavier Hutchinson, too.
Xavier Hutchinson
in the 6th round.
in the 6th round. And we're able to get other offensive linemen in there, too. I felt like I just really felt that everywhere they hit really well, especially early. So they did a lot of that.
I'm looking at some of these comments.
As another boomer bust guy.
Yeah, I cannot say that name either. No, me too. Like I'm usually good with a lot of the names. I can't pronounce half of them sometimes.
And then Seahawks, I agreed with you there. Of course, getting both Devin Witherspoon and Njigba in the first round. That was the win of the whole night. I mean, that was the best.
Well, the fact that we didn't see any receivers go until Jackson Smith.
Yeah, at 20, which is incredible to say the least.
And I kid you not, when we were doing our mock drafts, I had Jackson Smith and Njigba going to the Chargers at 21. This man right here, no shot. No shot.
He gets out of the top 20s. Sure enough, he did.
Number 20.
All of them did.
And you made fun of me for that.
All of them did. And then, of course, getting Anthony Bradford and some of the help they got was
Derek Hall. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Derek Hall in the second round for the Seahawks.
Mike Morris and getting Alawatami from
Michigan. The center. And then Jarrett Reed.
The offensive line help they got, along with getting the best wide receiver in the draft class and the best corner in the draft class. I mean, that's really solid. They're doing a really good job over there. And then, like I said, with the Eagles, I mean, there's nothing else to say about it. They went straight Georgia Bulldogs this year. I mean, 3 of your top 5 picks from in this draft were from the Georgia defense. And it's incredible that they were able to get all 3 of them. Getting Tanner McKee as a backup quarterback is not too bad of a move either.
Moro Ojiro was a pretty
Ojomo. Yeah, Ojomo was definitely solid. And then, like I said, I'm agreeing with you with Indianapolis having the best draft because, listen, I know a lot of people will say that that's a stretch, but when you look at the positional value, because you and I were listening to that clip or whatever you were talking about with the Cleveland guys earlier, they're talking about which teams had the best positional value in this whole draft, and it was Indianapolis by a long shot. Because, again, Josh Downs, who they got in the 3rd round, many didn't think he would ever get out of the 2nd round because of how good he was. Like you said, Blake Freeland supposed to be in the 3rd, maybe even late 2nd. Adebawari should have been a 2nd round pick.
And people were projecting him at late 1st.
Yeah, and Darius Rush, who should have been a 3rd round pick. You got him there. Jalen Jones could have been a little bit earlier. Jake Witt could have been a little earlier. So, the value of these picks for Indy was what set it apart. Was a lot of these guys who were top 100 players and everyone's draft boards kept falling, and then they were still getting them. So, I mean, it's a very nice piece that, even basically their 3rd round pick and half of their 4th and 5th rounders all were guys that should have been taken earlier in the draft, and they weren't, and they fell right in the Colts' laps every time. So it just makes a lot of sense in that. So that's why they're number 1 there.
Rounding off our last topic that we've got for the show, and then we'll call it quits, is, Derek, let's talk about a couple surprising picks that surprised us throughout the entire draft, rounds 1 through 7. I'll start off by saying the one that surprised me the most in the 1st round had to have been Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Lions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you saw how hyped they were. They were hyped to get Jahmyr Gibbs, like as if they thought somehow, some way that he was going to be gone by the time they got to number 18, which is hilarious because, I mean, if you just want to look at where the next running back went off the board, I mean, we can try to find it while I stall for time here. But, I mean, I don't think there was a running back taken till 52, which was Zach Charbonnet which was for the Seattle Seahawks at 52. So from pick 12 all the way to 52, there wasn't a running back taken. There was the top two guys, and there was nobody else sitting there at all. So it's kind of like weird that, they took him so early. It just felt like you could have gotten somebody else.
Could have gotten
12,
Christian Gonzalez.
and then you could have went a different direction.
Could have went Joey Porter Jr. Because it's amazing because the Lions defense, their secondary, I can see what they're doing. Their secondary, they got Cam Sutton this offseason. They got CJ Gardner-Johnson. They got Emmanuel Mosley. They got guys in the secondary to help build that up and keep it afloat for 1 year. Jack Campbell was arguably the best linebacker in this draft. And, to get him at the 18th pick was a reach, but it's still a good positional piece and nothing the less. However, the fact that they didn't choose a single corner throughout this draft is very, very shocking to me. But what I think is going to happen is I think that they're waiting until next year's draft. They've got only one first-round pick, but they're going to probably choose a corner for next year's draft and figure out what's going to happen there. My second surprising pick I'd have to go with was Josh Downs falling to you guys in the third round.
It was incredible, man. I couldn't believe it. I even asked, Kevin Rogers, how that was going to work. And, he said, we truly expected him to be gone in the second. We did not think there was any chance that we were going to get him. But when he fell to us, we loved it. And I mean, even Chris Ballard mentioned that we tried for a half hour to trade back in, to go further in to try and trade and get him, but no team was budging. But yet somehow, some way, he still fell all the way to Indianapolis at pick 79, which is incredible to say the least. Even Reggie Wayne said best wide receiver in the combine, best wide receiver in the draft process from his eyes. So, I mean, again, that was incredible that pick was able to happen. I would say I definitely would say one of the weirdest ones that we saw was Kelee Ringo falling all the way to the fourth round.
Yep.
I mean, everyone was thinking this guy was going to be a second rounder because from what it was, I mean, he had 6 top 30 visits. So there were tons of teams that wanted to know more about this kid, thought he could be a good star with their team. And then all of a sudden, we just see him continue to fall. And then we're hearing new information about, this injury concern and that he may not actually be that hard of a worker based off what the Georgia coaches were telling us. See, that's the kind of stuff that you and I would never hear about. Obviously, the coaches know more about it because they're the ones that are talking to these guys. But that's something that we don't know about until we hear it from the guys that are actually communicating this stuff to the national audience. When somebody falls like that and you have no idea. So, I mean, that was a shocker because I would have thought that the Colts would have potentially went with him in the second round. So.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're looking at it for the last pick that I'm going to choose to be a surprising pick that fell is Trenton Simpson to the third round to the Baltimore Ravens. The fact that he went to the third round for a linebacker that was projected to be the second best linebacker or even third best in this entire draft, and he fell to the Ravens at pick 86 was a phenomenal pickup for them and a great choice because they did not pick up Patrick Queen's fifth-year option. They're going to let him walk after this next year. And the fact that they just signed Roquan Smith to a 5-year contract, having Trenton Simpson and Roquan Smith is going to be insane. But, nothing to say the least. I mean,
yeah, Cody, I got back to you, bro.
I mean, those are his shocking picks to me. The only other one that I would choose is the Rams picking Stetson Bennett in the fourth round.
Yeah, and then JDW keeps blowing it up, but I think that was funny. Sean Clifford getting drafted in the
sixth
round. I thought it was fourth.
Was it?
Yeah, it was fourth. I'm gonna look it up because now you're testing me, and now I need to know because I think it was the fourth. I don't think it was the sixth. Yeah, or fifth round. Okay, fifth round. But even then, Sean Clifford to get drafted in the 5th freaking round when this kid is like 26 years old and doesn't even deserve to be on a football field anymore.
Listen, you had Stetson Bennett go to the freaking Rams, who was 25 years old.
I could at least understand that because at least he went to a national championship twice. At least then.
Yeah.
But like Sean Clifford doesn't do nothing, man. How about Emil Kiker? Yeah.
Yeah. No, he should have been drafted. I'm surprised.
And Indy got him.
I'm surprised.
I can't believe
I had you guys picking him in one of my mock drafts, but the thing is, I expected it to be like in the 5th or 6th round.
He was the first guy that the Colts called and immediately signed. And he is a guy that could immediately compete for that right guard spot for Indy.
And you know what I was shocked with the Browns? We traded away our 7th round pick for a 6th rounder for next year from the Ravens, which we needed a linebacker and a safety. The first person we picked up in free agency was Ronnie Hickman, a safety out of Ohio State. And then we got, a couple linebackers that were very shocking that I was not shocked I was shocked that they weren't drafted and everything. So who knows? But that does it for the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast today. Make sure you tune in for the upcoming weeks. We are going to go division by division, starting in the NFC, grading every team's draft that they did and talk about the players throughout there, and maybe even pick a division winner and go through that. That'll be the next series that we talk about for the offseason while we're getting ready for training camp and OTAs. Derek, anything to add?
Nope. This is it. I mean, this is the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure y'all have a good rest of your Friday.